Hello everybody and welcome back to Carried Away Travels. In this week's video, I'm going to be telling you about one of the most popular areas in all of Iceland, the South Coast. This beautiful area was probably my favorite day we spent during our week in Iceland. The only thing that I would say came close was the Snæfellsnes Peninsula because the South Coast is just so insanely diverse. It has mountains and volcanoes, glaciers, black sand beaches and basalt columns. It has waterfalls, museums. It has a little bit of everything along this stretch, and it is all just so rugged and beautiful and unique. So it is no surprise to me that so many people come to Iceland and they head right here. Now, with all those incredible natural wonders to explore, you could very easily spend several days just diving into this area and seeing as much as possible. However, if you are trying to fit a lot into a short period of time, this video is going to be for you because I'm going to give you a one-day guide to the highlights of this area, those top points that you absolutely can't miss, along with a few different recommendations or alternatives so you can customize it to your specific preferences. But this is going to give you a great overview to plan a perfect day. Or if you do want to expand on this a little bit, this is a great starting point to plan your itinerary around these different parts of the South Coast. And just to help round out this itinerary, I will also be including suggested time frames. And at the end, I'll have a list of recommended gear that you're going to want to have with you for this day, or at least this area of the country, just to make sure you're prepared for every situation. Now, with that said, if this is your first time here, I want to give you a very special welcome. And of course, welcome to all of you regulars as well. But my goal with this channel is to make your planning as easy as possible. So I create guides like this all the time to just help you know exactly what to expect, what you want to prioritize, and things like that. So if that does sound like the kind of content you want to see more of in your feed, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to get more videos like this from me in the future. Now let's go ahead and dive into this absolutely incredible part of Iceland. First up, let's talk about where you're going to start your journey from. So this is a one-day itinerary, and a lot of people base their entire Iceland trip out of Reykjavik. Now that's possible, it's doable, but I personally feel like it wastes a lot of time because it adds onto your drive. And just in general, if you stay in Reykjavik the whole time, you miss out on the opportunity to visit some of these smaller towns and villages that really give you a better taste of Icelandic life. And so you can come here from Reykjavik, but it is going to be like a 2-hour drive at the start of your day. So I would recommend staying in Selfoss. That's still about an hour from your first stop, but it is a much more centralized location. So if you're working your way here from, say, the Snæfellsnes Peninsula or Borgarnes or somewhere else, that's a decent stopover point because it is one of the larger towns in Iceland. It's still very small, but that's a great place to spend your night. We spent 2 or 3 nights at Hotel South Coast there, and we really enjoyed exploring the town in the evenings. So if you stay in Selfoss, you're going to have about an hour drive to the first stop on this South Coast itinerary. There are a few other hotels along the way, but they do tend to be kind of few and far between. But Selfoss is going to be pretty much the main hub along the South Coast until you get all the way down to the other end in Vik. All right, to start your morning off, head straight to the Seljalandsfoss waterfall. This is one of the most iconic spots in Iceland, definitely one of the most popular waterfalls. I have referenced this in my 5 no-hike waterfalls to see in Iceland, and one of the reasons it is so popular is because you can just pull up into the parking lot and see it. However, this waterfall is just absolutely breathtaking, so I would totally hike to go see it. But it is a beautiful, almost 200-foot drop. There's a main fall and it's relatively thin, but it does have other falls coming down the cliff next to it. But what makes this one so special and so popular is that during the warm weather months, there's a path that goes behind the waterfall. And so you can stand behind this waterfall and look out at this stunning Icelandic landscape. And because this waterfall has such a powerful spray, on pretty much any sunny day, there's going to be at least one rainbow. When we visited, there were two. So you can stand behind this waterfall, see it pouring down, see rainbows, and then this beautiful landscape. It is such a gorgeous sight. You've probably seen pictures of that all over social media if you've done any research on Iceland. Now, we visited in April, which is technically still winter in Iceland, so we did not get to go behind the falls, but it was still absolutely gorgeous. Those double rainbows just blew my mind. The falls are beautiful. You get to walk pretty close to the edge. It falls into this really nice little pond. There's a quaint little bridge that takes you on either side of that pond, and it is just very beautiful. There's also a walking trail that goes along the cliffs, and you can see some of those other cascades coming down the cliff as well. Now, something to keep in mind is that spray that causes all those beautiful rainbows will also absolutely drench you and your electronics. So we were wearing waterproof ski coats when we walked up there, but Daniel pulled out his phone to take some pictures, and it got so wet in the 30 seconds he was standing there that it started malfunctioning for the next day. I did not want to take my professional camera anywhere near that. So just keep that in mind. If you have a waterproof cover or a foam pouch or whatever, you're going to want that if you get close to the falls, because that spray is so powerful, it's just going to soak everything in its path. I would recommend you spend about an hour at Seljalandsfoss just to take in the waterfall from all different angles, and there is that walking path, so if you want to go down that, take a leisurely stroll, you just want to make sure you have enough time for everything, but make sure you get there as early in the day as possible because this is a popular spot, and the later in the day you get there, the more people you're going to have to share it with. If you're interested in volcanoes and particularly how volcanic eruptions have affected this immediate area here, there is a visitor center just down the road that I would recommend you stop and take about 15 minutes at. It's from the volcano that erupted in 2010 that I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce, but it destroyed a lot of this area right where you'll be standing. There are pictures that show the farm across the road covered in ash, and you can see it now, and it's vibrant and it's thriving again. But this little visitor center will give you some very interesting information about that eruption, and again, it's right on the side of the road and you only need about 15 minutes, but it can be very interesting to tuck that information away for one of the stops later in the day. Once you're done exploring Seljalandsfoss, head about 30 minutes down the road to yet another iconic waterfall, Skogafoss. Now, this is, in my opinion, more visually impressive because it's such a wide fall. You can hear it roar. It is about the same height as Seljalandsfoss, about 200 feet tall. But this is such a cool waterfall because you can walk right up to the pool at its base. So you can go right up to the base of this waterfall. It's on this really cool black pebble beach, which, keep in mind, can be very slippery with the water when it gets cold, but it is pretty stable ground. But you can walk right up to that, and then it's got a little river kind of flowing along the side. Once again, this is a great spot to see rainbows. We saw two here as well, and to me that was just so incredibly magical. It really did look like something out of a fairy tale or a fantasy movie, which is probably why they use this waterfall in the Game of Thrones, but it is just such an impressive stop. This is another one of those no-hike waterfalls that you can literally see from the parking lot, so once you step foot out of your vehicle, you can be at the base of the falls in 3 to 5 minutes. It's flat terrain. It is so beautiful. It is so easily accessible. But if you are up for a little bit of a challenge, there is a path on the right-hand side of the waterfall that takes you up to the top of the cliff, and then you can look out over it. If you are up for that challenge, definitely take the time to do so. It will add on to your time there, but it is such a cool and different view. However, once again, if you're not up to spend that kind of energy, you don't have to. You can enjoy the waterfalls fully from the base of the falls. Depending on whether or not you choose to do that additional hike, I would recommend 30 minutes to an hour here. This is one of those spots where I just wanted to stand and stare at it for a really long time because I was awestruck. So if you want to spend the whole hour just gazing at this gorgeous waterfall, like, go for it. But in general, I would say 30 minutes to an hour is a very reasonable time to spend here. If you are a history buff, the next thing on your list is going to be the Skogar Museum. Now, this is literally next door to Skogafoss. It's like, boop, you go from one parking lot to the other, and this can be anywhere from 1 to 2 hours depending on how deep you want to dive in, or if you don't like history, I have recommendations on skipping this altogether and doing some more nature stuff, but I'll get to that in a minute. Now, the Skogar Museum is this sprawling complex with over 18,000 regional artifacts. Like, there is so much to see. They have stuff from old fishing gear to authentic traditional clothes, textiles, pottery. There's an entire building dedicated to like transportation and technology, and so it has carriages and cars and communication devices. Then there's an outdoor like open air museum section, which was honestly my favorite. They had a traditional turf farm, and it was crazy to think about people living in there. It was really interesting to see just how they made that work with like a farm and animals and everything. They had other buildings that represented traditional Icelandic architecture styles, like a church and a school and a house. They even had a little elf house and church, which, if you know anything about Icelandic folklore, elves are a big part of that. So they had their little elf house. I really enjoyed that section. And there's just so much. Every room is just packed full of artifacts in the main museum. It's just very interesting to see all these different pieces from Icelandic life through the ages. So there is a lot to see, and there is a lot you can read. So if you are really interested in history, I would recommend a minimum of like 2 hours here just to really soak it all in and see it all. But if you're in a rush or you're more passively interested, you can spend an hour here kind of just browsing through, doing the circuit, and then move on with your day. If you do stop here, I would recommend getting lunch at the on-site cafe before you head on to the rest of your day, just because restaurants can be few and far between. All right, the main highlight of your afternoon is going to be the Solheimajokull glacier. As always, if I butcher any of these names, I am sincerely sorry. I promise I am trying my best, so please just bear with me. Now, this is the stop I referenced in the little segment about the Volcano Visitor Center. The appearance and melting rate of this glacier are directly correlated to that volcanic eruption in 2010 and one previous one. So that volcanic eruption that you will learn about at the visitor center directly affected this glacier pretty heavily. So that's why I said it can be interesting to make a stop there before, get some of that information, and then come kind of see some of the effects here. This was a particularly fascinating stop to me because I've always heard about glaciers, but I never really had an accurate picture of what it looked like. I think in my head I was still picturing like an iceberg, but this glacier is so cool. It is 5 miles wide, and this particular one is covered in these really cool streaks of black ash from volcanic eruptions. Now, sadly, those volcanic eruptions have caused this glacier to start melting at a more rapid pace than a lot of other glaciers, and there's a very large glacial lagoon right at its base. If I remember correctly, it melts about the length of an Olympic pool every year. Like that glacial lagoon extends by the size of an Olympic pool every year. So, unfortunately, this glacier is melting, but it is so beautiful to see. There is a fairly easy walking path with an outlook point where you can look over the lagoon and the glacier, and that is free to access. But if you are interested, this is one of the best glaciers to hike in Iceland. Now, if you want to take a hike, please, please, please listen so closely. This is not a casual whatever hike you just decide to do spur of the moment. Hiking a glacier has a lot of dangers that even hiking on like a mountain is not going to have. So you need to book a guided tour. There are plenty of options you can find online for like a 3-hour guided tour with an expert glacial guide who's going to make sure you have the equipment you need, that you walk like a safe, approved pathway on this glacier, and just come out unscathed. So if you want to hike this glacier, do it. What a cool experience. Carve out that extra 3 hours, but make sure you do book a tour. If you do decide to do a glacier hike here, I would recommend you skip the Skogar Museum. If you want to prioritize nature, I would cut out the history there and probably would shorten my time at both waterfalls. They have those optional walks slash hikes that you can do. If you want to make sure you have time for this, that is how I would cut down the rest of your itinerary. Once you're done exploring the Solheimajokull glacier at whatever pace and extent you want, you're going to hop back in your car and you're going to drive about 40 minutes down the coast to Reynisfjara Black Sand Beach. Now, Iceland has a number of black sand beaches, but this is the most popular one just because it is so visually impressive. Not only do you have this really cool mixture of black sand and black pebbles, but on the side there is this really cool basalt rock formation. It's the product of volcanic activity. It's got a little bit of a cave look to it, and it does have this very otherworldly feel that just really makes this location so impressive. So this is a place I would definitely say to carve out at least an hour for, but depending on how much you want to walk on the beach and explore, take pictures, you could definitely spend 2 here. Now, this part of the coast can be incredibly windy, and this is not a place for swimming. Like, I just want to make that very clear. So when we went, it was super blustery, it was cold. We still enjoyed it, but it was more of a wind whipping my hair in my face type of situation than like a hill walk on the beach, but it fit. Like, it fit the atmosphere. I didn't mind. It was an adventure. But something a lot of tourists aren't aware of is that the waves here are insanely powerful, and a lot of people will go up to the water's edge and they will turn their back to the waves and take a picture, and then they will get swept in because these waves come in and literally knock them off their feet and just pull them out to the ocean. So please, please, please be smart, be careful, be aware of your surroundings. If you are the person taking the picture and you see a wave coming at your friend or family member, do not treat it as a practical joke that they're going to get pulled into the ocean. It's actually very serious. So that is something that you definitely want to keep in mind as you explore. But again, there's a lot to see here. Just looking at the basalt columns, we spent like a good 10-15 minutes there because they're just so intricate. And again, that kind of cave formation is really cool. It goes right into the water. There are also some other rock formations right beyond the coastline that are really cool. You can see those in these pictures here. And then you can just walk along this beach for a really long ways, and there are more cool rock formations off in the distance. So you can spend a decent bit of time here if you want. So again, I'd say 1 to 2 hours. Make sure you dress appropriately for the weather and just have a great time. Once you're done at the Reynisfjara Black Sand Beach, the last stop on your itinerary for the day is the town of Vik. Now, this is a town that's right at the southernmost tip of Iceland, so it's all the way down. This is the end of the main south coast road trip hub in general, but Vik does have a pretty decent selection of things to check out, which is kind of rare in Iceland just because so many of these towns and villages are so small. But Vik is a great place to spend anywhere from 3 hours to just have an overnight stay. Depending on the weather, how much energy you have, how late in the day it is, there's a few things you can pick and choose from, so I'm going to throw out a number of options that we really enjoyed. First, if you're not completely tired of black sand beaches, you can check out the Skogafoss Black Sand Beach. It's literally on the other side of the peninsula from the Reynisfjara Black Sand Beach, but it is right there. Like, there's buildings and then you just have easy beach access if you want to maybe watch the sunset there or grab a sandwich and go eat it on the beach. That type of thing that is there. It's not quite as impressive as Reynisfjara, but it still has a really cool view. Another fun thing you can do here is go check out their church on a hilltop. This is like the iconic white and red church that you often see in pictures of Iceland. It has a beautiful view, so you will need to go up to the top of the hill to see it, but I mean, it is absolutely gorgeous. Definitely worth the 10-minute detour to drive up there, take pictures, come back down. There is also a fairly large shopping center here, which, especially once it gets dark, can be just a great place to hang out and do some souvenir shopping, or maybe if you want better hiking or winter gear, something like that. There are some great stores for that with really high quality items. So you can definitely take your time shopping through that. In addition to that, there are a couple cafes which, like most of Iceland, are relatively pricey, but the food is decent. Or there is a grocery store here as well, and that's what Daniel and I ended up doing. We went in and we got pre-made sandwiches and a giant pastry, and we were so full. It was great food because everything was so fresh, and we cut our cost probably about in half from what we would have gotten at one of the restaurants. So it just really depends on if you really want a hot meal, or depending on where you're staying, you could get stuff to cook or microwave and take back with you. It really just depends. So that is where I would recommend you grab your dinner at, is one of the places in this shopping center. It's just very convenient and you do have a few different options. And last but not least, if you are interested in seeing a lava show with real lava, this is one of 2 places in the world where you can do that, and the other one is in Reykjavik. So the lava show here is such a cool experience. We did the one in Reykjavik. It's by the same company, and you just get to be so close to this real lava. You see it flowing, and there's a really fun presentation about how volcanic activity has affected Iceland over the years. And then as this lava cools down in front of you, you just get this really fascinating talk, and you get to see it changing consistencies. And then at the end, when it's mostly cool, you get to get even closer, and it was so neat to see how it not only just formed this rock, but it formed these really cool strings. They looked like fiber optic threads. They were so cool. So that was just a very fascinating presentation. And so they have a location here in Vik with evening shows, and I think that's just a great way to wrap up your night. As promised, I just want to wrap up this video with some essential gear that you're going to want to have with you to make sure you enjoy this day fully. So first and most importantly, you are going to want layers. For everywhere in Iceland, you're going to want layers, but specifically for this, you're going to want to make sure that you have waterproof outer layers, especially as you're going to see those 2 waterfalls with all that mist. In the winter, I recommend a ski coat. If it's summer, you're going to want a rain jacket or something, just something to protect you from that spray. Following that line of thought, a waterproof cover for your electronics. I believe I mentioned that earlier, but either a foam pouch or a case for your camera, something that's going to keep them from getting absolutely ruined by that powerful mist. If you do decide to do a hike at the glacier, your guide should provide you with all the gear that you need for that. So that's not something you should need to pack for, but throughout the day as a whole, even just going up that walking path, you're gonna want boots with really good tread. A lot of these places get slippery, so you want something that'll keep you stable even if it's a bit icy. And just in general, you want something that's really comfortable too, because as you can probably tell, you're gonna be on your feet a lot today. You should also make sure that you have a reusable water bottle. Since all of the water in Iceland is drinkable, you can fill it up from any tap and most streams and rivers. So don't waste your money on plastic water bottles. Do something good for the environment, enjoy the fresh water there, and stay hydrated throughout the day. Finally, I'd recommend you pack some protein or granola bars, something that's going to give you energy for this day. Again, this is a pretty packed itinerary, and parts of this are kind of active, or you're going to be kind of between locations where you can get food. So definitely have something that's going to be able to give you some good, healthy energy throughout the day, just to make sure that you don't crash and miss out on some fun. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it and that you're super excited to go explore Iceland's south coast. Again, this is just such an incredibly beautiful area with so much to see. So I hope that you get to soak it all in. And if you have the time to spend a little longer here, that you take it so that you can really fully experience it. If you do have questions about this itinerary or any of the places that I mentioned, please feel free to drop those in the comments down below and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Would also love to hear what you're most excited to see. So if one of these really stood out to you, let me know down in the comments and just let me know what you're looking forward to about it. If you're looking for more Iceland inspiration, I have a bunch of other videos from our trip to Iceland last spring. So I would encourage you to check those out just to get some ideas, as well as specific itineraries and packing guides and things that are just going to make your life a whole lot easier. As always, I do have a full written blog post on my website, www.cockenwriting.com. That's great for a quick reference guide in the future if you want to have more of a condensed version of this itinerary to reference. I encourage you to go check that out. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to Carried Away Travels, and turn on those notifications. And just stay tuned for more videos from me like this in the future. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you'll be back again soon. And until then, happy travels.